You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs, to my generation, I'll take the fall. The stakes, across the nation, and it's a sex, the gods, the fakes, the fraud, the messing with me. Come on, come on, come on, let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Hey yo, I'm back. Reliving the War episode 207, October 25th, 1999. Raw's in Providence, Rhode Island tonight while Nitro's in Phoenix, Arizona. Halloween Havoc just wrapped up and there seems to be a lot of confusion over the WCW Championship. Sting issued an open challenge at the end of the show, Goldberg accepted that open challenge, and the Stinger got pinned after taking a jackhammer. Goldberg was then handed the WCW Championship belt, however the commentator stated before the match that the championship wasn't actually up for grabs, so yeah, it's a bit messy right now. Sting's walking around backstage on Nitro without any face paint, looking for JJ Dillon, and we're going to hear from Sting at the very beginning of this week's show. But meanwhile, over on Raw, the New Age Outlaws are trying to convince Vince McMahon to give them a shot at the tag team titles. The Holly Cousins are already booked tonight, it ain't gonna happen, so the boys try to get a match against Rock and Mankind, but unfortunately Mick Foley's also booked in a match. We have got Mankind versus Triple H for the WWF title, and Triple H isn't happy about it. The Outlaws still want to compete. Triple H looks at tonight's card. He notices that Steve Austin isn't booked, so he suggests his old DX teammates face The Rock and Stone Cold tonight in a tag team match. Vince McMahon agrees, so we'll be seeing that match in tonight's main event. The Godfather isn't looking for a match, he's looking for his hose, and he has to kick down a door to find said hose hanging out with Big Mark Henry. Looks like therapy hasn't helped Mark at all, and he's still a big deviant. Sting comes down to the ring on Nitro and he calls out James J. Baby Dillon. He confirms he only wanted a fight last night at Halloween Havoc and he wants his WCW belt back. Dillon walks down and Sting says he was only trying to bail WCW out of a bad situation last night, seeing as Hogan laid down in the middle of the ring. The Icon didn't want to shortchange fans who paid for a ticket, and Sting didn't say anything about the World Championship being up for grabs in last night's surprise main event. Dillon confirms that Goldberg is not the world champion, but neither's Sting. The powers that be are stripping Sting of his title because he attacked a referee after his match with Goldberg, and a tournament's going to begin tonight to crown a new world champion. Dillon says he's only the messenger, this isn't his decision, and Sting tells Dillon to give the powers that be this message before launching an attack. Dillon takes a Stinger splash, he gets put in the Scorpion Deathlock, and Goldberg has to run down to save Dillon before Sting breaks his back. Security rushed down to break up the fight, so it appears we're moving from Hogan and Sting to Goldberg and Sting. We then get a look at the tournament brackets. In Group 1, we've got a few interesting matches, mainly Bret Hart vs Goldberg and Kidman vs Konnan. Remember, these two are part of the same faction. In Group 2, we've got Sting vs Complete Tit, but Shivani says this is actually Hugh Morris. As a matter of fact, it isn't Hugh Morris, and Sting wrestles Brian Knobbs later in the show. Way to go, WCW. And look, Madusa's gonna face a mystery opponent. Bret vs Goldberg happens in our main event tonight, and Goldberg's US title will be up for grabs, though remember, Bret Hart's dealing with a bad knee injury. The Outsiders get informed by Mike Graham that they're booked for tonight's show. Kev says he's retired and he has no gear, but he has something in his cooler that rhymes with gear. Mike Tenay tries to get confirmation about what's going on, but Kev reiterates that he's retired, while Scott says he has a lot of bosses, but Mike Graham isn't one of them. Norman Smiley's tournament match was up next and he was looking forward to a technical wrestling match unlike the hardcore match he had last week. So you can imagine how surprised he was when Bam Bam Bigelow brought a ton of weapons to the ring while announcing that the match will indeed be contested under hardcore rules. Norman got his ass kicked, but he ended up falling on top of Bigelow while a trash can was placed over his head. This was enough for Norman to win the match, so yeah, he's becoming quite the hardcore legend these days. The Filthy Animals come to the ring, and Tori recorded what happened to Ric Flair last night after the pay-per-view. The Animals dumped Slick Rick in some undisclosed location and they kicked dirt all over the Nature Boy. Kidman says Rick's done, he's not coming back. And Ray says WCW should give the Animals a chance so they can, and I quote, hump you like the dogs we are. Konnan says when the Animals are on heat, someone's gonna be dead meat. Yeah. So the Revolution run down to the ring and we've got ourselves a fight. Tori backs off, she heads up the rampway, and she gets abducted by Asia. It looks like Asia is now part of the Revolution. The Animals eventually wake up and they go looking for Tori in the backstage area. Kurt Hennig reveals that the powers that be are going to fire him if he ever gets his shoulders pinned to the mat. Obviously, he's not happy about this, but he made sure Lash LaRue didn't pin him by punching the referee in the face. After Hennig got disqualified, he hit his opponent with a steel chair, and for some reason, Disco Inferno showed up to check on Lash. Kurt hit Disco with a chair shot too, because why not? Jeff Jarrett showed up during the Nitro Guard search to say the world title tournament is all a big work. Double J's gonna be the next world champion because the powers that be decided that Jeff's the chosen one. Buff Bagwell found out that Jarrett's not to be messed with, and Double J says he'll send the total package back on the Lex Express if he interferes in his business again. Jeff did not attack Elizabeth last week apparently, Jarrett had nothing to do with it, and yeah, I told you guys last week it was the Honky Tonk Man. I don't see where the confusion's coming from. Eddie Guerrero and Perry Saturn then had their first round tournament match. Saturn said if the Animals tried to interfere then they'd never see Tori again, so Eddie had no backup for this match. The ring began smoking mid-match for some reason. It must have needed a break from all this bullshit. And the match ended when David Flair ran down to attack Eddie with his trusty crowbar. The referee didn't see it, and Saturn won after putting Eddie in the rings of Saturn. The Revolution are holding Tori Wilson in some sort of storage area. Dean Malenko needs to take a leak, and I want you to listen to the sound he makes when getting hit with a steel chair. Poor guy. Benoit locks the Revolution inside their little storage room and he proceeds to make Dino screamo a little more. There's nothing Douglas and company can do as Benoit hits his old friend with another chair shot, and the beatdown ends with Stinko Malenko getting a Revolution shirt shoved in his mouth. Raw begins with another Godfather vs Viscera match. On Nitro, we've got the Outsiders cutting a promo. Midian's wearing some new face paint and I don't know how I feel about it. I'm gonna say right at this moment though, it looks pretty stupid. Viscera issued a challenge to the Godfather. He wanted a winner takes hoe match. Whoever got the victory would win all the hoes, and Viscera told Mark Henry that he'd give him free reign over all these women if the big man won tonight. So Mark, being the big hornball he is a little conflicted right here. Does he help out the Godfather or does he help out Viscera? Well, as you should know by now, Mark only thinks with his wiener. He stopped Godfather's whole train and Viscera won the match after a big splash. So Godfather loses all his women and they now belong to Big Viscera. Fucking hell. A few ladies stay back and try to help out the Godfather, but these poor unfortunate souls end up getting attacked by Viscera. To be honest, I'd rather take a beating from Viscera rather than joining him backstage for a party. These are some very smart girls. The Rock says he and Steve Austin have been playing a game of one-upmanship over the past few weeks, but tonight they have to put their differences aside when facing the Outlaws. What Austin feels tonight though is the same thing he's going to feel at Survivor Series, and that's the millions of millions letting the Great One know he'll always be the People's Champion. Rock needs to have a shave by the way, sort that shit out. The steel cages here on Raw tonight. Test and the British Bulldog are going to step inside for a match later on. Over on Nitro, Kevin Nash has an idea. The Outsiders could get out of this match they're booked in later tonight by stripping naked in the ring. The plan's to get Nitro taken off the air and therefore the Outsiders won't have to wrestle, but lucky for us, Kev kept his clothes on when he comes to the ring. Scott says, "Hey yo," and the crowd goes crazy. And he then says it's kind of funny how these new writers from up north need the Outsiders to save their television show. Nash says no one tells the Outsiders what to do. They've been doing what they want ever since they arrived at WCW. And just before Nash can carry on, Goldberg appears in the audience and he tells the Outsiders they have now got themselves a big problem. Seeing as Nash and Hall attacked Goldberg at the pay-per-view last night, the boys better have eyes on the back of their heads, because tonight the Outsiders are next. Edge and Christian take on the Holly Cousins next on Raw. On Nitro, we've got the return of the Macho Man. Well, it's a return, but it's also Macho saying goodbye for a while. Randy gets in the ring looking like a shiny, sparkly pimp along with Gorgeous George, and he pretty much confirms what we've all suspected. Vince Russo's wanted to get rid of Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, and Russo succeeded in his mission. Macho says the red and yellow's no more, Space Mountain's been closed down, but Randy Savage can't be taken out so easily. He then proceeds to take himself out by saying he's passing the torch tonight on Nitro. Someone's gonna lead WCW into the new millennium and Macho's willing to step aside for the next generation. But he also makes it clear that WCW needs Randy Savage while Randy Savage doesn't need WCW. It's a weird promo, but you do need to look at the big picture. Russo's wanting to slowly phase out the old timers and eventually bring them all back for a future rivalry. But of course, that plan goes to shit. He still tries it, but WCW's in such a mess at that point that the only way it can make any kind of sense is by pressing the reset button on the entire company. Anyway, Macho's done. He'll make one more appearance on Thunder in May of 2000, so say goodbye to Randy Savage. A terrible way to end his WCW run right here. The Filthy Animals are trying to find Tori, but they're having no luck. Looks like the Revolution have left their little cage and they've taken Tori to a new undisclosed location. On Raw, the Hardy Boys paid attention to the tag team match taking place in the ring. Hardcore Holly hit a perfect dropkick on Christian, and Captain Charisma needed to get that all-important hot tag. He makes it to his corner, and some double teamwork puts the challengers in the driver's seat. Hardcore sacrifices Young Crash when Edge goes for a spear, but when Edge goes to pin his opponent, the referee's count gets broken up by Scott Taylor and Brian Christopher. Too much have been repackaged, and Jerry Lawler says he thinks he recognizes one of these guys, that being Scott Taylor. The Hardy Boys run down to help Edge and Christian. The Hollies and the team that's going to be named Too Cool this week on SmackDown get taken out by the Babyfaces. Too Cool would become quite a memorable tag team of the Attitude Era, and this right here is the beginning of their run. The Fabulous Moolah says she can't defend the women's belt anymore. She wants to officially retire because she can't commit to being champion at her old wrinkly age. She wants to give the belt back to Ivory, but Ivory wants to take the belt off Moolah in a match. Mae Young tries to attack Ivory, but she's easily taken care of, and a referee runs down to begin this impromptu women's championship match. It doesn't take much for Ivory to beat Moolah here. A clothesline knocks Moolah down, and Mae Young really could have saved her friend, but she decided not to. I'd complain about the timing being all off here, but come on, it's not like Mae Young's a spring chicken now, is it? Ivory reclaims the women's belt. Let's move on. Next, we've got the Big Show versus Prince Albert on Raw, while over on Nitro, it's Madusa versus a mystery opponent. Right, so who's it gonna be? Who has the distinct honor of wrestling Madusa tonight? Disco Inferno? Mona? Berlin? No, it's Ming, the man called Ming. This must be punishment for Madusa's actions last week on Nitro and last night at the pay-per-view. So yeah, ladies, do whatever Vince Russo says or you too will get your ass kicked. Madusa gives it all she's got, but Ming cannot be moved. Our guy does have one weakness though, and that's a pair of big, fake, badly placed bolt-ons. Ming gets a look at the Mama Jammas and Madusa pokes our hero in the eye. This allows her to dropkick Ming from the middle rope, but this just tickles Haku a little. Our guy cannot be hurt. Madusa tries an enziguri, that doesn't work either. She tries a chokehold, but Ming slams her to the ground. Finally, we see the Tongan death grip, and that's the end of our match. Ming advances in the title tournament. Evan Courageous comes down to check on Madusa. Young Evan knows an opportunity when he sees one, and by God, he's gonna take it. As the two leave the ring, Dino Screamo Malenko walks down holding a microphone. He goes on to challenge Chris Benoit to a last man standing match tonight on Nitro, and that is a match we're going to see on this broadcast. The Outsiders are coming to terms with competing tonight. They say they aren't afraid, and whoever Hall and Nash are facing, well, they're going to get licked. Sounds erotic. Kurt Hennig and Brad Armstrong are complaining about the powers that be. Apparently, Russo told Brad to phone his brother Road Dogg and learn what a personality is. And Brad's a little upset that he's getting treated this way after all the years he's spent in the company. Kurt Hennig seems to have a plan though. He doesn't give away what it is, but the former Mr. Perfect has something up his sleeve. On Raw, we learned that the Big Show's dad hasn't passed away, but he is on his way out. Albert tells Show that he's sympathetic towards the big man and he only wants to test himself in the ring tonight. So the two make their entrances and the match was going fine until the big boss man showed up. Bossman's holding a family heirloom, something that belonged to Show's grandfather and father, and Bossman says he'll smash it into little pieces if Show comes any closer. He then goes on to say he visited Daddy's Show in the hospital and the smell of death was most definitely in the air. So he did the one thing Big Show didn't have the guts to do. He pulled the plug on the life support machine and the Big Show's father is no longer with us. Bossman pried that watch out of Daddy Show's cold dead hands after he passed away. And before we hear any more of this heartwarming story, Prince Albert attacks Show from behind and Bossman smacks Show with a hammer. My god. Bossman then proceeds to break the watch with his handy hammer and even handier anvil. And that, my friends, is what Hard Time is all about. Chris Jericho's going to prove that Chyna shouldn't be holding the IC title by teaming up with a random fan tonight in a mixed gender match. So we've got Chris Jericho and a mystery opponent versus Chyna and D'Lo Brown. On Nitro, the total package takes on Rick Steiner. So Chris comes down to the ring to make the dreams of one lucky Jericho-holic finally come true, and he picks out some dude dressed up as a woman. On closer inspection, this is clearly Stevie Richards. Stevie watches on as his partner takes a monkey flip followed by D'Lo's signature leg drop. Chris fires back with a running bulldog, but after Jericho takes a tilt-a-whirl slam, D'Lo tags in Chyna. The IC champ takes a drop toe hold followed by a few kicks. Jericho then performs a clothesline and Stevie Richards tags in. His clothesline to Chyna has no effect at all. Stevie then gyrates in the middle of the ring while the crowd have no idea how to react. Chyna spears Stevie and Mr. Richards gets his clothes ripped off. Chyna demolishes Stevie and our match ends with a pedigree. And rather than help his partner out, Jericho decides to jump off the apron and accept defeat. Once Chyna and Miss Kitty head back up the ramp, Jericho attacks his partner. Stevie takes a double powerbomb followed by the walls of Jericho. And what did poor Stevie do to deserve such bullshit? This is a first round tournament match we've got here on Nitro, but Jeff Jarrett comes down to the commentary table just as Rick hits a Steiner line on Luger. Double J explains that he wants a public apology from Lex because Jeff would never hit a woman, and Tony Schiavone says he's well aware of what Jarrett got up to in the WWF. Lex is having a real hard time here as Rick continues to dominate the match, but he then notices Double J approaching Liz on the outside, and this is where our match ends. Liz trips up as Double J tries to explain it wasn't him who hit her last week on Nitro. Lex then goes for Jeff, but it's Rick Steiner who takes a guitar shot. The referee begins a 10 count because that guitar shot clearly isn't grounds for disqualification. Rick wakes up, he decides to go after Jeff. Lex abandons Miss Elizabeth so we can get a count-out victory, and Liz isn't happy that her man felt the match was more important than her well-being, but well, business is business, I guess. The total package advances in the World Title Tournament, and by the way, this tournament's going to end at the next WCW pay-per-view. Next on Raw, we've got Triple H defending his WWF title against Mankind. On Nitro, it's Kidman versus Konnan, plus we've got a Buff Bagwell promo. Konnan says this match will never break up the Filthy Animals, and he's really not in the mood anyway, seeing as his real issues with those mark-ass busters, the Revolution. Kidman says he'll end every member of the Revolution's careers if Tori comes to any harm, and I don't know guys, he isn't the most intimidating person in the world, is he? The two go to work in the ring and they don't hold back either. Konnan delivers his rolling lariat while Kidman performs the BK bomb. The referee then takes a bump that didn't look good at all, but this leads to Harlem Heat coming down to get a piece of K-Dog and K-Man. Billy takes a Harlem sidekick while Konnan gets put down with a slapjack, and Harlem Heat then go to the outside to fight with Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. Kidman takes this opportunity to pin Konnan, so Kidman advances in the World Title Tournament. Konnan takes the loss personally. He said this match wouldn't break the Animals up, but he shoves Kidman anyway. Guerrero says the Animals are family, the enemy standing on the outside right now. So K-Dog comes around and he challenges Harlem Heat to a tag team title match later tonight. It's going to be Konnan and Kidman versus Booker T and Stevie Ray. So I hope you like the Filthy Animals because they've been all over this week's episode of Nitro. The outsiders try to work out who their opponents are going to be tonight. Nash thinks it could be the Kangaroos or the Assassins. Scott Hall thinks it could be Butch and Luke. Buff Bagwell's in the ring and he says he's going to take everything sacred about the wrestling business and relieve himself all over it. From this point on, he's not going to job out, he's not going to lay down. If you mess with Buff, you get this stuff and no one's going to tell him what to do, especially the two idiots in the back writing this crap. Buff's words, not mine. Two big baldy dudes walk down to the ring and yeah, they kind of remind me of a few Baker Michael-likers, know what I'm saying? They get in the ring and apparently these two represent the other two idiots in the back who write this crap. They then beat the hell out of Buff, so this must be the muscle behind the powers that be. By the way, Buff does continue to go quote unquote off script after this beatdown. He was supposed to job out on Thunder to Scotty Riggs, but he ended up pinning his opponent instead. It's insane to me that people above Russo would let this kind of thing continue. The Rock's watching the WWF Championship match backstage as Mankind and Triple H go to work. Mick catches Hunter in a sleeper as we see Stone Cold watching the match too. The two competitors then head out of the ring where Mick rakes at his opponent's face, but he then crashes into the ring post shoulder first and Triple H now has a target. After hitting Mick with the ring steps, the two head into the ring where Hunter pulls off an arm breaker, and the match then goes to the mat where Triple H remains focused on the arm and shoulder. Mick tries to fight out, but he gets thrown into the ring post. He does surprise the champ with a double arm DDT, but when he goes for the mandible claw, he ends up getting his neck trapped between the top and middle ropes. Triple H still takes Mr. Socko, but Mick can't keep it applied for very long. The two fight in the crowd and Triple H stays in control. When the two get back in the ring, Triple H grabs a chair, but Foley kicks it right in Hunter's face. While the referee's busy trying to get the chair away, Mick grabs the WWF belt, and Triple H takes a shot right to the head. The crowd think that Mick's just won the WWF Championship, but Triple H kicks out. So Mick applies the mandible claw one more time and Hunter's out. Triple H fades away and Mick puts him on the mat. And just as the referee's about to raise Hunter's arm for a third time, Val Venus runs down to cause a DQ finish. Triple H getting help from Val Venus is just really weird. Venus attacks Mick to continue their rivalry. Al Snow runs down to help out Foley. Venus gets sent to the outside while Triple H heads back up the ramp. So unfortunately, Mick Foley was unable to win the championship tonight on Raw. Bubba Ray Dudley takes on Kane next on Raw. On Nitro, we've got Malenko versus Benoit plus Sting versus Brand Knobs. The last man standing match on Nitro wasn't bad, and it also had a clean finish, though the finish was a bit weak to be honest. The two brawled in the ring at the opening bell before tumbling to the outside. Benoit gets thrown into the guardrail, but when the two head back to the ring, Malenko gets his little Iceman smashed into the ring post. Malenko takes a hard chop and the referee begins his 10 count, but the match continues on with a few more hard chops in the corner. Malenko begs for mercy, but Chris isn't in the mood. Benoit performs a back suplex from the top rope, and when both men get up, Chris performs his consecutive German suplexes. Malenko is able to escape disaster by performing a low blow, and Benoit then gets suplexed to the outside. Malenko then uses the ring steps to his advantage by dropkicking him into Benoit's back. But back in the ring, Benoit pulls off another back suplex before he blows his nose on Dino Machino. Look at Dean selling it like a pro. The match ends rather abruptly after a double clothesline. Benoit gets to his feet first, resulting in the most anticlimactic ending to a last man standing match ever. The Animals then run down and Benoit lets them feast on Dean's carcass, but the beatdown stops when Shane Douglas, Asia and Saturn bring out Torrie Wilson. Shane tells Kidman and company to stay away from Dean. Dean's able to walk away from the ring. Eddie starts losing it, seeing as the Filthy Animals have no way to save Torrie, so the Revolution head to the backstage area while the Animals are told to stay put. After a commercial break, the Revolution and Torrie get in a car and they leave the arena, so Ray and Eddie jump in their car to give chase. Kidman and Konnan are going to stay back for their match against Harlem Heat. Sting defeated Brand Knobs in about 10 seconds. All it took were a few shots with the baseball bat and Knobs took a pinfall loss. Sting didn't even have to remove his jacket, it was over just like that. On Raw, Kane tells X-Pac to stay out of his match against Bubba Ray Dudley. Apparently, Torrie was speaking to Kane and she said the big man shouldn't make fun of the way Bubba Ray speaks, but Bubba and Devon attack Kane and X-Pac before the bell and Bubba's able to grab Kane's voice box. Bubba then proceeded to make fun of Kane in the ring while using said voice box, so the Big Red Machine made his way down to the ring and Bubba got his ass kicked. Bubba Ray got in no offense at all, so Devon tried to interfere. Both Dudleys are no match for Kane though, as Devon gets taken out with ease before Bubba Ray takes a super chokeslam. Eventually, the referee calls for the bell when Kane can no longer fight off both Bubba Ray and Devon. So the post-match beatdown begins and Torrie tells X-Pac to go out and help his friend. Bit of a red flag here, seeing as Torrie has a newfound interest in the Big Red Machine. X-Pac finally acquiesces and he runs down to chase the Dudleys away. It doesn't look like Kane cares all that much, the Pac had to come down to help him out. Stephanie McMahon says she's starting to feel better, she's getting her memory back, and she remembers she's making Big Andy marry her against the big man's will. She also wants Test to beat the crap out of Davey Boy Smith in our next match. So we've got the British Bulldog versus Test inside a steel cage while Harlem Heat take on Kidman and Konnan over on Nitro. The Nitro match had the worst finish ever. After a few minutes of action, it comes down to Stevie Ray and Billy Kidman. Kidman goes for his tornado DDT, but Stevie counters with a back suplex. Stevie then pins Kidman. Billy bridges to get his shoulders up, but you can clearly see Stevie Ray's right shoulder is not on the mat. The referee counted the 3 and Stevie thought he won. It's then announced that Kidman and Konnan are the winners of the match and the new tag team champions, but it's so blatantly obvious that Stevie's shoulder was up and it's not like there was any question about it at all. I know they're doing this so the match can be revisited, and I know it's to make it look like Harlem Heat didn't really lose, but why put the belts back on Harlem Heat at Halloween Havoc just to take them away again with a really bad finish? Bret Hart's backstage and he says he's still hurt and he doesn't expect to beat Goldberg tonight, but he's holding on to the tiniest bit of hope he has that somehow he can pull off a miracle in tonight's main event. Bret Hart's not a quitter, he might suffer some serious consequences, but he's still going to give Goldberg a fight. Goldberg thinks an injured Bret Hart makes him a bit more dangerous and he's not taking this match lightly, but Billy Boy still has to take care of the outsiders. Kevin Nash and Scott Hall are still next. On Raw, we got a pretty typical steel cage match and there wasn't much to talk about in regards to the in-ring action. I was hoping Davey would pull off a devastating chinlock inside the cage, but our guy remained focused here as Test pretty much kicked his ass. By the way, whoever set this cage up tonight did a terrible job. Look at the gaps in the corners, my god. This one went from mediocre to pretty awesome when the Main Street Posse came down, not just because Rodney, Pete Gas and Joey Abs are absolute legends of the business, but because Tess went to the very top of the cage for a diving elbow drop. That's one big boy jumping off that cage and the crowd went crazy for it. The posse then broke the padlock and they were able to get inside the steel cage, so Shane McMahon came down and the Boy Wonder performed a picture-perfect crossbody from the top of the cage. Again, the crowd went nuts here and so did Jim Ross on commentary. I totally forgot this match took place, never mind seeing Test and Shane pulling off these insane high-risk moves, so yeah, this one definitely gets a thumbs up from me. Bulldog escapes the cage while Shane fights with his old friends from Greenwich. Joey Abs pulls off a modified outsider's edge just before the posse leave the cage. Tess gets the door slammed in his face, and yeah, a pretty successful night here for Davey in the Main Street Posse. I'm absolutely delighted. Stephanie runs down to check on her fiancé and her brother, and Shane and Tess raise their arms like they just won the match. Fucking losers. On Nitro, we have a DDP promo and the Outsiders tag team match. On Raw, we go to the bar to check in on the Acolytes. So Kimberly Page takes the microphone and she says she's went from being a Nitro girl to a Nitro woman. I can't help but feel that DDP's kinda getting Mark Merrowed here, as Kimberly's been grabbing way more attention than her husband ever since Russo took over. But DDP tells David Flair to bring his, and I quote, rat bastard booty down to the ring so DDP can beat him up just like he beat his daddy last night at the pay-per-view. David comes out and it looks like he's paid a visit to HBK's Emporium of Sniffy Goods, and DDP gives David a kiss, like a pretty passionate kiss that probably made Kimberly a little jealous. David produces his crowbar and DDP gets whacked. Flair goes a bit mental here and he keeps hitting Dallas over and over again. It takes Kimberly Page to get in between the two before David stops his attack. Flair Jr. then leaves the ring, his eyes are still very wide, and you know, if David can't do the serious stuff, then maybe this more psychotic version of David might be a better idea. He still sucks the big one, but obviously what he was doing just wasn't working out at all. DDP gets put on a stretcher, but it's not because his ribs are sore, it's because he's feeling a lot of embarrassment right now after getting beat up by David Flair. So the Outsiders are going to have their tag team match and the entrances have been completely removed from WWE Network. This is because Nash and Hall are facing 3 adult film stars and the cameras stay focused on one lady named Minka. Minka has the most comically enhanced breasts I've ever seen in my life, and you can chalk this one up as one of Russo's more infamous booking decisions. Now, in saying that, this match is still funny. Yes, it's dumb, but it's still funny. It's also annoying that the return of the Outsiders is wasted on such absolute bollocks, but Scott Hall can't wait to get to work and he really enjoys getting put in a headlock. Nash wants tagged in, but Scott thinks he's got this one covered. Hall gets pummeled in the corner and yeah. The bad guy then performs a Flair flop, and this lady gives him a spanking similar to the one Flair gave Kimberly Page last week. Hall's having the time of his life, and so's Bobby Heenan, by the way. The commentary during this match is really good. It's now time for the hot tag. Scott struggles as he makes his way to Big Sexy, and Bobby Heenan's confused about which Big Sexy Tony Schiavone's talking about. Minka tags in and she tells Nash to lay down if Kev wants to see those gigantic beach balls hiding underneath her WCW jobber shirt. We know Kev has no problems laying down for the good of the business, brother. And look, Scott wants to get pinned too. I can't believe the Outsiders are losing clean tonight on Nitro, but by God, it happens. It's now time for Minka to live up to her end of the bargain, but before things get spicy, Goldberg shows up and both Outsiders get speared. It was all a load of nonsense, but I laughed quite a few times while watching it back, so yeah, I'd be a hypocrite if I said I hated it. What you need to remember here though, and what's cut out of the WWE Network version even though it's pretty vital moving forward, is that the powers that be made it clear that they were responsible for selecting the Outsiders' opponents. The Harris brothers were there when the women made their way down to the ring, so for some reason the powers that be were doing the Outsiders a favour here. On Raw, the Acolytes visit the friendly top bar, and all the boys wanted to do was go in and have a quiet beer. Two bozos playing pool then point out that Farouk and Bradshaw are wrestlers from out of town, and Bozo A wants to buy the Acolytes a beer. Farouk says it's fine, and Bozo B says these wrestlers must be too good for them. Bozo A then shoves Bradshaw while claiming to be some amazing arm wrestling champion, so we get a little arm wrestling contest and Bradshaw wins easily. Bozo B then makes a racist comment to Farouk that I don't want to repeat here. Bozo A repeats it a few times, and so Farouk smashes his bottle over Bozo B's head and all hell breaks loose. I'm pretty sure this bar belonged to referee Tim White, and Vince McMahon paid for all new furniture, by the way. The place gets wrecked as the Acolytes beat the hell out of anyone who gets in their way. The overhead pool table light gets wrecked, pool cues, tables and chairs get smashed. Even the jukebox isn't safe as the Acolytes completely tear the place up, and it's actually pretty fun watching all the destruction. After they get done beating everyone up, Farouk throws a few coins at the bartender, and the Acolytes leave while Farouk calls Bozos A and B a pair of punk ass bitches. Raw's main event features the New Age Outlaws taking on Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. On Nitro, it's Bret Hart vs Goldberg for the US title. Not only is the US belt up for grabs here, but the winner's going to advance in the heavyweight title tournament. Bret Hart comes out limping pretty badly, and seeing as Goldberg hasn't been beaten since Starrcade 98, you don't envision him losing this match. Bret gets brought to the corner immediately, and after a clean break, the Hitman takes a few knees while against the ring ropes. A clothesline from Goldberg puts Bret on the mat with ease, and Bret then takes Goldberg's military press power slam. Bret can't get up, and it's almost like Goldberg feels sorry for his opponent, but the Hitman fights back in the corner and Goldberg decides to show no mercy. Goldberg applies a knee bar, Bret instantly gets to the ropes, Goldberg allows his opponent to leave the ring, and Bret shows a lot of heart by getting back inside the ropes. Hart gets floored again with a right hand, yet he doesn't want to stop the match. Goldberg tries a leg snap, but Bret gets back up. It looks like Goldberg doesn't want to hurt Bret any further, so he applies another knee submission in hopes that Bret submits. When Bret won't give up, Goldberg releases the hold. He tells the referee to stop the match, but Bret tells Mickey J no, the match isn't over yet. The challenger falls after getting Irish whipped. Goldberg again wants the referee to stop the match, but Bret goes all in with a sleeper hold in hopes that the US champion fades away. Unfortunately, Goldberg counters and the referee takes a bump, and Bret gets thrown out of the ring as the Outsiders and Sid Vicious hit the ring. The numbers are too much for Billy Boy. He takes a big boot from Sid, a chokeslam from Scott Hall, and a sidewalk slam from Big Sexy. Sid then powerbombs the man who beat him last night at Halloween Havoc, and Bret slowly gets in the ring to pin the invincible Bill Goldberg. Bret makes it back inside the ropes, he covers Goldberg, and Billy Boy loses the US Championship and his shot at the world title at WCW Mayhem. Nitro fades out as both competitors stay on the mat, and Bobby Heenan says Bret Hart did the unbelievable tonight on Nitro. Over on Raw, Triple H had a little laugh at the New Age Outlaws before they go to the ring for their main event match. Hunter told his old DX comrades not to get their asses kicked tonight, but the boys looked focused as they made their way down to the ring. They have their work cut out for them though, as they're facing the two biggest babyfaces in WWF right now, and it doesn't begin well for the Outlaws when Billy Gunn takes the Luthez press. The Rock tags in and Billy takes a few shots in the corner. Gunn does counter a clothesline attempt with a neckbreaker though, but when the Road Dogg gets tagged in, he gets put on the mat right away. Road Dogg fights back with a shake, rattle and knee drop, but he gets way too confident. Rock's able to set his opponent up for the people's elbow, but Billy saves Road Dogg by pulling him out of the ring. Austin attacks the Outlaws on the outside before the match resumes in the ring. He then tags in, and once again Road Dogg's confidence proves to be his downfall. Billy Gunn gets Austin on the outside though, and this puts the Outlaws in the driver's seat, so we're now building up to the Rock's hot tag. The Outlaws pull off double team moves while coming in and out of the ring. They put Austin in their corner to keep him away from the Rock. Austin's forced to fight both Outlaws, and he and Road Dogg go down after a double clothesline, and this allows Stone Cold to tag out. Triple H ends up running down, and Steve Austin's forced to fight the WWF champion all the way up the rampway. And while The Rock is able to perform a rock bottom, he ends up taking a heel kick from an interfering X-Pac. This allows Billy Gunn to win the match via pinfall, and Stone Cold has to run back down to stop Rock from taking a beating. As Austin gets floored, Triple H gets back in the ring, and it all starts to make sense as X-Pac shows off a D-Generation X shirt. Steve Austin takes a pedigree when the DX music begins playing in the arena, and Billy Gunn hits Rock with a jackhammer just before Raw goes off the air. D-Generation X is back. X-Pac and the Outlaws have realigned themselves with Triple H. Bit of a hard decision this week because I didn't completely hate Nitro. What I don't like about the show though is the fact that they simply refuse to put on matches longer than a few minutes, with the exception of the main event. I can see why people would hate the Outsiders thing, and as mentioned, I'm still pretty torn about it to this day, but I am enjoying the undercard guys getting a bit more airtime. Granted, it was overdone a little this week and the Filthy Animals were maybe shown a bit too much, but that aspect of Russo's new creative direction is something I can get behind. The work shoot promos and all that stuff, that I could do without. Raw had some surprisingly decent matches this week. Mankind vs Triple H, Test vs Bulldog, and the main event were all pretty good. I did like DX performing at the end of Raw too, so I'm giving it to Raw this week. I was nearly calling it a tie, but the more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards Raw. Raw's now on 111 points, Nitro's on 76, and we've got 20 ties on the board. In the TV ratings, both shows improved over last week, a 5.6 for Raw and a 3.5 for Nitro. Next week on Raw, the relationship between X-Pac and Kane completely breaks down as the two are scheduled for a one-on-one match. The Big Boss Man and Albert cause more problems for the Big Show. Steve Austin faces Billy Gunn one-on-one, and Triple H defends his WWF Championship once again. On Nitro, Bret Hart confronts Hall and Nash for interfering in his match against Goldberg. We get an update from Scotty Steiner regarding his current injury. Norman Smiley finds himself in another hardcore match, God love him. And Chris Benoit meets Dean Malenko once again, only this time it's inside a steel cage. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Loads of early videos are available on Patreon if you want to support the channel, and as always, please take care.